the edges just inside the punch with our stylus, in this case our wooden skewer. You go all the way around, emboss that out. When you pull it out, what you will get is a lightly raised effect, and it's very difficult for you to see that with this shiny effect on this cardboard. But it does give you a raised up area, and that's a really cheap way to use your embossing, because you've probably got heaps of punches. I know I have. I've got this lovely little heart-shaped one, and I simply take this section out, pop my paper in, do it the other way this time so that the shiny side isn't the side we're trying to get on camera. So that's the side that makes it really difficult to see what's going on. There it is. You might even go around that with this nib, which I know will fit. You do get a better line if you're using your nib or a pen with no ink than you do from the wooden skewer. It's just I use it on that particular punch because of the intricate corner shapes. So there it is. You can use this side where it's embossed into the paper, or this side here where it's embossed out. Okay, so that's a great way to use your punches. Now another technique that I like to use is stamping. Now once you've got your stamped image on a piece of cardstock, you might think it's looking a bit boring, and I'd really like to pop that out a bit. And it's really quite easy to do. All you do is you turn your paper over, take your stylus, and you will follow that stamped image with your stylus. It's freehand, I know it might be a bit scary, but you'll get the hang of it. All you're going to do is pop the image out a little bit. It's one of those techniques that just adds a little bit of extra pizzazz to that stamped image. And you can do that with any stamp, as long as when you turn it over, you can see through the paper. Now, the reason that I've put this piece of foam underneath is because my stylus has to have somewhere to go. So when I was using the punch, there was a great big open space in that area for my stylus to sink into. If I was to do this straight on the table and working on hard glass, it's not going to have any effect because there's nowhere for it to push the paper out. So by using this thin piece of foam, which came as packaging in one of my purchases, so I didn't spend anything on it, I allow myself an area for the stylus to sink into. Okay, so with this, what I've done is I have embossed all of the areas of the stamp except for 2 lines. So I've left these, so it will give you a little bit of a better idea of the effect. I'm going to turn it over. What you get is a raised up area of stamp through all of these, including this one, and that one really pops because it's a really thick area. These 2 lines aren't embossed. And when you run your finger over it, you can really feel the difference. So that's a technique that you may like to use. I find it just gives a little bit of extra pop to my embellishments that I'm making. The next thing that I'm going to show you is just using a simple stencil. Now this stencil is pretty thin. Because of that, I'll show you the difference. When you're working with a very thin stencil, you won't get quite the amount of pop out of your work that you do with a much thicker one, such as the brass stencil. And that's because there's really nowhere for the paper to go to be pushed out to. So it's got very limited area. Okay, so it's there and it's nicely defined, but if we do the same thing, okay, so you can see there that we have the image, it is sharp and clear, but it's not really deep. Okay, so I'll show you, as I turn it back, what I'm going to do is pop the foam back underneath, and I'm now going to do the same thing for this other wing. very difficult to show you texture on camera, and that's really what we're dealing with here. It's a difference in, you know, how light or heavy something is. And this time I'm using a paper because I really wanted you to see what I'm doing. I find if I'm working with cardstock, it's harder for you on camera to see what I'm doing, whereas working with a paper, it's easier for you to see, but it's also quite dangerous that you'll rip through, and there I have there. Okay, so when I turn that over, you can see that the body of my butterfly and that other wing are actually deeper. Now, the definition has been lost on those edges, and that's because of that hard surface. So once I have the depth, if you like, I can then come back, placing my image back into the stencil, and just go around that edge so it sharpens up those lines. When you're doing this, what you're doing is you're kind of working right on the edge rather than in the valley, which is what you do for most of the embossing work that you do. By working just on that edge, what I'm doing is defining the line. I don't know if many of you watch Craft TV Weekly. I'm a fan, and they do a bit of work with some metal. What they will do is, once they have their image, and they have done their embossing on one side, they'll actually come back and refine their image by working either side of those lines, and that's a technique that you may decide to use. I don't tend to, because I want results, give me results, let me move on to the next part of my project kind of worker.